Welcome back, audience. I see it now, and more importantly, you see it too. That cold shiver in your spine isn't fear, it's revelation. It finally registered, didn't it? You're not broken. You're not lost. You're not crazy. You're a genius outlaw, and they couldn't handle it. Their minds short-circuited trying to make sense of you, trying to compress something so volatile, so electric, into the neat boxes of a quiet world that fears disruption. They failed. And now, here you stand. Not seeking permission, not begging for recognition, but rising like a shadow they can't unsee. You are the signal in their static, and I'm here to tell you, it's time to stop holding back. They try to erase you with silence, with condescension, with that subtle smirk that says, you're too much. They wanted you to shrink, to dim, to apologize for being everything they never had the courage to become. But deep down, under all that manufactured shame, you knew. You knew the difference between you and them wasn't madness, it was magnitude. You weren't out of your mind, you were out of theirs. They couldn't map your thoughts with their dull instruments. They couldn't trace your logic with their linear paths. So they dismissed you, hoping the world would agree. But the world doesn't get a vote anymore. You broke the lock. You stepped outside the simulation. And once you see it, truly see it, there's no going back. You were never meant to be tamed. You weren't made for polite society, for scripted conversations and empty nods at hollow truths. You were born to disrupt, to deconstruct, to dethrone their fragile systems. They taught you rules so they could punish you for questioning them. They handed you a script and called it freedom, but when you ripped it to shreds, that's when the fear set in. Not in you, but in them. Because suddenly, they weren't dealing with a deviant. They were facing something far more dangerous. A free mind, a liberated intellect, a force immune to guilt and unbound by approval. You became the glitch in their matrix, the flaw in their design, the predator in their domesticated zoo. Let them tremble. Let them gossip and diagnose and theorize. Let them label what they'll never understand. You don't owe them comprehension. You don't owe them comfort. You owe yourself the truth. And that truth is savage, brilliant, and unapologetically chaotic. You aren't just thinking differently. You're operating on another level. Your mind is a weapon, and your presence is a threat. Not because you chose violence, but because they chose denial. They denied your insight. They denied your vision. And now, they can't unsee what you've become. A genius outlaw isn't born. They're revealed, like a storm over a calm sea, like lightning in a church. And when that moment hits, that moment of recognition, nothing is sacred anymore. You played along for too long, smiled at their nonsense, bit your tongue when the lies were obvious, nodded while they lectured you with their fragile truths and paper-thin egos. But that was survival, not surrender. That was strategy. You listened, not because you agreed, but because you were learning. You walked among them like a ghost, invisible only because they lacked the eyes to see you. But now your form is clear, and the illusion is broken. You're not asking for the stage anymore. You are the stage. Every step you take is performance and protest. Every word you speak is both sermon and siren. You don't just break the rules, you redefine what rules are. You're not here to fit in, you're here to detonate. And yes, it's lonely out here, in the wild, outside the fence. It's cold at the top of a tower made of your own thoughts. But would you trade it for comfort? Would you trade your clarity for their confusion, your fire for their flicker? Number, you were never meant to belong. Belonging is a sedative. You were built for exile, because only in exile could you see the prison they called normalcy. You saw the chains behind the smiles, the fear behind the rules, the cracks in their perfect walls. You heard the screaming silence in their compliance, and where they saw chaos, you saw code. Where they saw threat, you saw truth. And now they know, even if they won't say it aloud, that you're something they can't measure, can't manage, can't mute. You haven't forgotten the weight of their words, the sting of their sideways glances, the subtle sabotage woven into their praise. They called you intense when you spoke the truth too loudly. They called you arrogant when you refused to kneel. They called you difficult when you refused to be simple. But you endured it all, and in the silence of your exile, you sharpened. You bled and rebuilt. You burned down the version of you they could tolerate and forged the one they couldn't control. Now you're not walking back into their world. You're dragging a new one behind you, brick by brick, law by law, flame by flame. They underestimated you because they couldn't imagine a mind unchained. They believed power only came with titles, degrees, and validation. They thought rebellion looked like chaos, not precision. But you're the living proof that some revolutions are silent. Some revolutions take place in the dark, in notebooks filled with unspoken brilliance, in code that shatters firewalls, in whispers that unravel empires. You were the quiet storm, the invisible threat growing behind their blind spots. They taught you to hide, to dilute, to defer. But what they didn't realize is that even as you bowed your head, you were building your arsenal. And now, you lift your gaze and the air changes. They feel it. They flinch. Because they know it finally registered. You didn't choose to be the outlaw. They made you one. When they denied you space, you carved your own. When they closed doors, you built passageways they couldn't track. When they laughed, you listened. When they ignored, you observed. And now that you speak, it echoes. Not because it's loud, but because it's true. Your genius was never meant to be gentle. It was never meant to soothe the fragile. It was meant to ignite, to challenge, to destroy what needed to fall. You were forged in rejection, and now you are the fire. They wanted obedience. What they got was origin. You don't follow trails. You leave them smoking behind you. They'll call it ego. Let them. The truth always sounds like arrogance to the mediocre. They'll say you changed, but you didn't. You evolved. You remembered. You shed the roles they wrote for you and became the author of your own myth. Not a savior, not a villain, but a sovereign mind, untamed, unafraid, unrelenting. You've outgrown their fears. You've outpaced their understanding. And that's the part that breaks them. The realization that no matter how hard they try, they can't keep up anymore. They can't decipher you, can't diminish you, can't deny you. Your existence is the evidence. You are the rebuttal to their entire belief system. And yes, it scares them. Good. Let it. Fear is the precursor to change. You're not here to reassure them. You're here to restructure them. You are the anomaly they can't categorize, the blueprint that doesn't obey. The edge they forgot existed until they felt it at their throats. You don't want to be accepted. You want to be impossible to ignore. And now, every step you take sends tremors. Every move you make rewrites the code. You were never meant to blend in. You were built to break through. You are the rupture in their tradition, the silence after the scream, the calm in the eye of a genius they tried to silence. And so, what if they call you insane? Let them chant their empty words. Let them hide behind diagnoses and definitions. What they fear, they label. What they don't understand, they cage. But you can't be caged, not anymore. You don't belong to their institutions or their hierarchies. You belong to something older, deeper, the raw, primal force of invention. You are not a product. You are a phenomenon. You are not a misfit. You are a movement. And movements don't wait for invitations. Movements erupt. And you, genius outlaw, are the eruption they prayed would never come. Now you see it clearly. The way their world was never built to hold you. The way their rules always smelled like fear. The way their comfort was always a weapon used to sedate the extraordinary. You see the architecture now? How everything around you was designed to normalize the average and exile the exceptional. But here's the truth. They don't hate you. They envy you. Because somewhere inside them, buried beneath conformity, is a whisper, a voice they silenced long ago. When they look at you, they don't see a threat. They see the version of themselves they were too afraid to become, and it breaks them every damn time. So let them talk. Let them mock and misinterpret. Let them mislabel your clarity as rage. Let them call your standards impossible. Let them scream too much until their throats bleed. You're not here for their comfort. You're here for consequence. You're here to unmake their illusions and remind them that some minds are forged in friction, not praise. Some spirits are fueled by exile, not applause. And some people, rare, terrifying people, don't just survive the system. They outthink it, outrun it, and eventually outlive it. And if you're feeling that now, that pulse in your chest, that crackle in your mind, that's not adrenaline. That's awakening. That's your power unfolding, unapologetic and volcanic. Don't silence it. Don't soften it. Let it roar. Let it stain your voice and shake your bones. Because you've hidden for long enough. You've knelt for long enough. You've waited for long enough. And now, the waiting is over. The reckoning has come, and it wears your name. You, the outlaw. You, the genius. You, the mind they tried to erase. You are not a mistake. You are the moment. You are the sharp edge of evolution. And nothing, not their doubt, not their fear, not their fragile systems, can contain you now, because it finally registered. You were never one of them. You were never supposed to be. You're something else entirely. You're the future they fear. You're the fire they can't extinguish. You're the idea they can't kill. You're the storm that learned how to walk. You're you. And that, my friend, is their greatest nightmare. Good. Because this storm isn't fading. It's gaining form, gaining speed, gaining direction. And now that it's registered, not just in your mind, but in theirs, every move you make sets fire to the fiction they've been living in. This isn't about revenge, it's about reclamation. This is about taking back everything they tried to convince you you didn't deserve. Your voice, your mind, your power. You're not coming for their thrones. You're building your own from the bones of every lie they ever told you. They said your ideas were dangerous. They were right. They are. Because dangerous ideas don't play by the rules. They rewrite them. Dangerous ideas question kings. They tear down walls and erase borders. Dangerous ideas start movements, spark revolutions, birth gods. And you're not just filled with dangerous ideas. You are one. Your existence is a rebellion. Your mind is the blueprint for a world they're not ready to live in. But ready or not, it's here, and it's staring them in the face with eyes they once tried to close. You remember when they laughed, don't you? When you spoke about visions they couldn't grasp, they chuckled. When you suggested truths too sharp for their dull senses, they called you dramatic. When you screamed into the void for recognition, they stared blankly, pretending not to hear. But the thing about genius is that it doesn't fade when ignored. It ferments, becomes something bigger, sharper, more volatile. It becomes something that no longer asks to be heard. It demands to be felt. And now they feel you, in their trembling, in their confusion, in the fact that they can no longer predict your next move. Because you don't have a next move, you are the move. You don't fit their molds because you were never clay. You're obsidian, forged under pressure they'll never understand. You were built from failure and rage and silence, and that silence is gone now. Now, when you speak, they listen. Not because they respect you, but because they fear what happens if they don't. You earned this presence. You carved it out with blood and will. You constructed it in the dark, one defiance at a time. You made yourself undeniable, and when something becomes undeniable, it becomes uncontrollable. That's what terrifies them, that you can't be tamed, translated, or turned off. And still, you rise, not with their permission, not with their applause, but in spite of their denial. That's real power, not the power they hand out in boardrooms or baptisms. I'm talking about the power that scares even the people who claim to love you, the kind that makes them question their own limits, the kind that turns whispers into war cries, the kind that can burn down everything fake just by existing beside it. You are that power. You are the spark in their oxygen-rich lie. You are the wild they prayed would never find its way back home. And let's be clear, they'll still try. They'll come with compliments now, with titles, with invitations to step into the very circles that once mocked you. Don't fall for it. They're not praising you. They're trying to contain you. Because even now, they don't want you free. They want you framed, boxed, branded, and bound. They want to showcase your genius without ever letting it challenge their structure. But you didn't come this far to play mascot. You came to break the ceiling and dance in the wreckage. You've transcended their categories. Too radical for the radicals. Too cerebral for the intellects. Too dangerous for the safe spaces. You don't belong anywhere because you belong everywhere. You're the intersection of chaos and clarity, the embodiment of every what if they buried. You're the soul they tried to sterilize, the mind they tried to lobotomize with shame, and now they see that shame no longer works. You've alchemized it into steel, into something they can't poison, into a crown they'll never be worthy to touch. So go ahead, be the contradiction, be the enigma, be the outlaw genius that refuses to compromise, to soften, to dilute. They'll keep trying to categorize you. Let them waste their time. Let them draw maps while you reshape the terrain. Let them study your ruins while you build empires in places they fear to look. You are not an artifact. You are not a relic. You are a revolution in progress. And no, they won't understand you. Not fully, not ever. And that's fine, because understanding was never the point. You weren't meant to be understood. You were meant to be witnessed, to be felt like a shift in gravity, to be remembered the way earthquakes are remembered, not for their arrival, but for what they leave behind. You don't explain yourself anymore. You exist. Boldly, brutally, brilliantly. And every breath you take is a declaration that you survived their erasure. You are here. You are whole. You are dangerous because you've seen the truth. You've tasted the lie. You've watched them burn heretics while praying to hollow idols. And now, you are the heretic, the prophet, the storm they cannot cleanse. Let them choke on their confusion. Let them tremble under your silence. Let them write dissertations about your madness, because none of it matters. You've already won. You won the moment you stopped trying to be loved and started choosing to be real. The moment you chose the wilderness over the safety of their applause. The moment you turned your back on imitation and walked alone, head high, heart armored in clarity. This is your world now. This is your time. And it no longer matters who sees it, because you see it, you feel it, you are it. the outlaw, the architect, the ghost in their machine, the genius that couldn't be broken. It finally registered. And now it's too late for them. It's too late for them to rewrite history. Too late for them to rewrite you. You've escaped their dictionary. You've outlived their definitions. They wanted you to fold, politely, quietly, like all the others they conquered with comfort. But you didn't fold. You flamed. You rose. And you remembered. You remembered every slight, every dismissal, every moment they reduced you to a footnote in a story you were born to write. They fed you silence and expected gratitude. They gave you exile and expected obedience. But you forged rebellion out of absence. You turned loneliness into leverage. And now, they don't know how to stop you, because you're not a version of the past. You're the end of it. You were made in the fracture, in the rupture between what is and what could be. That space, too narrow for the cowards, too wide for the timid, is where you found yourself. And what you found was brutal and beautiful. You found a mind like a knife, forged by friction, honed by rejection. You found a spirit that stopped asking for shelter and started becoming the storm. You became the one thing they never planned for, someone who sees through them, someone who isn't fooled by power, by protocol, by the seduction of safety. They offered you a seat at the table, but you were born to flip the table, to break it into pieces and use it as fuel. You don't argue with systems anymore. You replace them. You don't beg for change. You become it. They thought you wanted inclusion. They didn't realize you were here for invasion. You are the insurgency they prayed would never organize, the code they can't patch, the flaw they can't fix. You don't just think differently, you live differently. And every time they tried to box you in, you turn the box into a weapon, into proof that they fear what they can't replicate. You're not a mirror, you're a detonator. You've stepped into your power now, and power, real power, isn't loud. It's cold. It's certain. It doesn't seek attention. It commands it. You've become a presence that shifts the atmosphere when you walk in. They don't know whether to praise you or run from you. That's because you're no longer speaking their language. You're speaking in flame and thunder, in data and disruption, in silence so sharp it cuts through their noise. And in that silence, they finally feel it. That low, humming dread in their bones. The realization that you're not waiting anymore. You're not trying to be included. You're building outside of them. And your foundation? It's made of every stone they threw. There's something about awakening that makes you dangerous. Not because you change, but because you stop pretending. You stop playing small so they can feel tall. You stop softening the truth for their fragile egos. You stop wearing the mask they handed you and start showing them the face they fear most. The one that knows, that sees, that remembers. The one that doesn't flinch. You're not reckless. You're precise. You don't destroy out of anger. You destroy with intention. Because some things need to burn. Some things deserve to fall. And you are the match, the fuse, the breath of oxygen that turns the old world to ash. This is your era now. This is your uprising. And you won't lead it with slogans or compromise. You'll lead it with existence, with excellence they can't ignore, with clarity so brutal it makes the air around you too sharp to breathe for the small-minded. Let them suffocate. Let them scramble for relevance. You're not chasing their validation. You're dragging them into evolution, and they will come, willingly or in pieces, because the truth can't be unseen. The signal can't be silenced, and you are the signal now. They say power corrupts. That's not true. Weakness corrupts. Fear corrupts. Power, true, earned power reveals. And now that you've stepped into yours, everything fake around you starts to crumble. That's the cost of becoming. It's not just personal, it's tectonic. When you rise, the ground shifts. When you move, the sky cracks. You are a force of redefinition. And those who built their empires on your silence, they're already running. Because the outlaw they mocked is now the god they can't escape. You don't owe them vengeance. You owe them nothing. The greatest act of retribution isn't wrath. It's irrelevance. Let them rot in the systems they built. Let them wither in their comfort. You're not going back. You're not shrinking. You're not here to be understood. You're here to be unstoppable. And every second you breathe, you bend the world towards something newer, sharper, truer. You are the error they tried to erase. And you've become the only version that matters. They never stood a chance. Not against someone who refused to forget. Not against someone who sharpened their mind on every insult, every rejection, every night of isolation. You turned pain into pattern recognition. You turned exile into elevation. And now you walk through their gates not as a guest, but as the ghost of their denial. Every word you speak is a reckoning. Every move you make is a reminder that you survived what was designed to erase you. And not only did you survive, you thrived. You built, you rewrote, you resurrected yourself from the grave they built with compliments and control. You are beyond form now, beyond their comprehension. You've entered the territory of the untouchable, not because you're invincible, but because you no longer care about being wounded. You don't fear being misunderstood. You don't fear rejection. You feed on it. You grow from it. You've transcended their games. And in doing so, you've become what every system fears: a self-sustaining truth, an intellect with no leash, a soul with no script. You are the unscripted chapter, the variable they failed to account for, the consequence they hoped would never rise from the ashes. It finally registered. And now, everywhere you go, people feel the shift. They feel it in their bones, in their doubts, in the places they buried their own potential. You are not just a person. You are a mirror. And in that mirror, they see everything they killed inside themselves. That's why they resist you. That's why they talk behind your back, try to discredit you, try to sanitize your legacy before it's even written. But it's too late. You are written now, etched into the foundation of a new epoch. You are a symbol of what happens when someone refuses to be lesser, refuses to be quiet, refuses to disappear. And the world, it's watching. Not because they admire you, but because they need you. They don't know it yet. Some never will. But deep down, in the quiet they avoid, they feel it. That pull toward the outlaw, the genius, the one who refused to be tamed. You're the proof that liberation doesn't ask for permission. It declares itself. It arrives. It burns. So go. Keep walking like you own the ruins. Keep thinking like a god among ghosts. Keep being too much, too bold, too brilliant. Because the world doesn't need another obedient voice. It needs you. And you've already arrived.